Her in-laws forced Amber Lawson's 9-year-old daughter to take the blame for stealing, knowing the girl didn't do it. "You have to protect your cousin," they told the child. "It's what family does." Sophie got suspended. Amber didn't shout. She acted. 2 hours later, their lives started to fall apart. If anyone had told Amber that a normal Wednesday morning would end with her 9-year-old daughter sitting across from a police officer, clutching a crumpled confession in her shaking hands, she would have laughed. The dry, humorless kind you give right before the world tilts. But that was exactly how it happened. It started with laundry. Just laundry. A quiet morning, a half-finished cup of coffee, and the feeling, for once, that the day might be manageable. Then her phone buzzed. Missed call from the school. Then another. And another. By the time she finally heard the ringtone, she had shampoo in her hair. That was the only reason she didn't pick up sooner. Shampoo. Not disaster. Not crisis. Shampoo. She tapped the screen with wet fingers. "Ms. Lawson," the receptionist said, voice tight. "You need to come to the school. Immediately." "What happened? Is Sophie okay?" Amber asked. I can't discuss details on the phone, but you need to come now." Every mother knows that tone, the one that hits you right under the ribs. Amber rinsed, threw on clothes that didn't match, and drove faster than she legally should have. She told herself everything was fine. Kids fall, kids get sick, kids call home, kids don't confess to crimes. She didn't realize how wrong she was until she pulled into the school driveway and saw the police car. Her stomach dropped so fast she felt dizzy. Inside, the hallways were too loud and too quiet at once. A teacher guided her toward the principal's office, but the woman's eyes kept flicking away. That pitying, uncomfortable look people give when they know something you don't. The door opened, and there was Sophie, her daughter, her baby. Sitting rigid in a chair, hands balled into fists in her lap, little sneakers swinging above the floor. Her face was pale. Not sick pale, scared pale. Beside her sat Ms. Nguyen, her teacher. And beside Ms. Nguyen stood a uniformed police officer. Amber felt the world tilt again. The principal cleared her throat. "Ms. Lawson, please sit." What's happening?" Amber managed. The principal gestured to the table. A school-issued iPad lay there. Ms. Nguyen's name sticker on the back. Amber recognized it instantly. She'd seen the teacher carrying it at conferences. "This iPad went missing yesterday," the principal said gently. "We found it in your daughter's possession this morning." Amber blinked. That sentence genuinely didn't compute. "My daughter?" she asked, like maybe the word daughter suddenly meant something else. The officer nodded. She admitted she took it. Ms. Nguyen looked heartbroken. Not angry. Heartbroken. "We asked Sophie to write down what happened," the principal said softly. "This is her statement." She slid a page toward Amber. It was Sophie's handwriting. Her neat little block letters. Words she had clearly practiced. "I took the iPad. I wanted to borrow it. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Amber's throat closed. She knelt in front of Sophie. "Sophie, sweetie, did you really take it?" Sophie froze, eyes wide, looking from Ms. Nguyen to the officer, to the principal, then back to her mother. And she whispered, barely audible, "Yes, I stole it." The scripted line she'd been told to say. But Amber didn't know that yet. Not then. At that moment, all she felt was disbelief so sharp it burned. The principal kept explaining. Something about district policy, something about data access, something about mandatory reports. But Amber barely heard a word. Her ears buzzed, her heart thudded, her hands shook. Then the officer said, "We're not charging her. She's 9. But we do need a formal report, and the school is issuing a suspension." Suspension. Her daughter. Suspended. Amber nodded because she didn't know what else to do. What do you do when the ground you're standing on disappears? A few minutes later, Amber and Sophie were walking out of the office. Sophie held her mother's hand like it was the only solid thing left in the world. She didn't speak. Amber didn't either. Not until she buckled Sophie into the car and sat in the driver's seat, breathing like someone had punched her. "Honey," Amber said softly, "please tell me what happened. The truth. Just between us." Sophie didn't answer at first. Then her chin trembled, and the dam broke. "It wasn't me," she sobbed. "I didn't take it. I didn't. It was Mason." Mason, her 9-year-old cousin. Amber froze. Sophie continued through hiccuping breaths. "He took it from Ms. Nguyen's desk and brought it home. He thought it was funny. He showed it to Grandma and Grandpa. And they got so mad. They said he couldn't get in trouble because he's smart and special and he has opportunities." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "And they said I had to say I did it instead." Amber's heart cracked clean down the middle. "They told me I had to take the blame," Sophie whispered. "They said it was what family does, that I'm stronger, that Mason would get in big trouble and lose everything. And Grandma said—" She swallowed. "She said no one would love me if I blamed my cousin." Amber gripped the steering wheel so hard her fingers hurt. And I wasn't supposed to tell you," Sophie added, voice trembling. "She said you'd be mad at me." "Mad at you?" Amber had to look away for a second because she genuinely felt like the universe was splitting in half. She took out her phone. Her hands were shaking, but she dialed anyway. Gloria answered on the third ring, syrupy sweet. "Amber? Did Sophie get home all right?" Amber didn't bother with pleasantries. "What did you do to my daughter?" she asked. "Oh, don't start," Gloria sighed. "She's being dramatic. It was a little favor. Mason can't afford something like this on his record." She was suspended. The police questioned her. "Oh, stop," Gloria snapped. "She's a child. Nothing will happen." "She confessed to a crime she didn't commit," Amber said. "She helped her cousin," Gloria replied, voice sugary and smug. "You should be proud she understands family loyalty." Amber hung up. Not slammed, not screamed, just pressed the button. Quietly, coldly. That was the moment everything inside her shifted. Something clean, sharp, and final. They thought they could sacrifice her daughter to save their golden child. They had no idea what they'd just started. If you'd met Travis when Amber met Travis, you would have understood how she ended up here. He was the kind of man who could say good morning and make it sound like a compliment. Tall, tan, charming, absolutely useless. Though it took Amber years to realize that last part. Back then, she mistook charisma for depth. She mistook attention for love. She mistook a handsome smile for stability. And then she got pregnant. That was when the charm evaporated and real life walked in uninvited. Suddenly, Travis still wanted to party, still wanted late nights, still wanted freedom, still wanted to flirt with anything that had eyelashes. But be a partner? A father? Help carry groceries? Hold a crying newborn at 3 a.m.? Please. Amber remembered standing in the kitchen one night, holding baby Sophie in one arm and a bottle of formula in the other, while Travis walked out the front door with cologne still hanging in the air behind him. He kissed her cheek and said, "Don't wait up," as if she had the option. When Sophie was 2, Amber found photos on his phone, blurry selfies with girls whose names she didn't want to know and whose outfits made her remember the body she used to have. He didn't admit it, didn't deny it, just shrugged like fidelity was old-fashioned. By the time Sophie turned 4, Amber filed for divorce. And honestly, she thought the worst was over. She thought naively that Travis would barely fight her. He was never home. He didn't even pretend to know Sophie's bedtime routine. He couldn't remember her pediatrician's name. So you can imagine her shock when he fought tooth and nail for custody. His lawyer used words like fatherly devotion and shared responsibility, and Amber sat there wondering if she'd entered an alternate universe. But he won. 2 nights a week. 48 hours where Sophie was supposed to spend quality time with her father. And for 5 seconds, Amber let herself hope. She thought maybe he'd grown up. Maybe losing them had shaken him awake. Wrong. The first Thursday that was his, he texted, "Running late. Drop her at my parents'." That became the routine. Every dad night was really a grandparent night, because Travis's schedule was always crazy. Crazy being code for girls and bars and anything except his child. But Amber didn't drag him back to court. She wanted to believe Sophie having grandparents was better than nothing. She wanted calm, not another custody war. Stupid, in hindsight. Around the same time, Travis's sister Brianna moved back to town with her son Mason. Sophie's age, Sophie's class, Sophie's opposite in every way. Brianna moved in with Gloria and Martin, Amber's ex-in-laws, and once Mason arrived, the house became his kingdom. He wasn't just the favorite. He was the son, and everyone else was required to orbit him. Age 6. That's how old Sophie and Mason were when the imbalance became too obvious to ignore. Mason got everything. The best snacks, the best toys, the expensive holiday pajamas, the special outings, the trips, the praise. Sophie got, well, whatever was left. Hand-me-down affection, second-hand smiles, the "we love you too" sort of energy. And the worst part? Amber kept telling herself she was imagining it. He lives there full-time, she told herself. They're just closer to him, she told herself. Maybe I'm being sensitive, she told herself. She rationalized the hell out of that dysfunction because she didn't want to believe a family could love one child and merely tolerate the other. But then came the moment she should have seen as a warning sign. During the divorce, Amber had asked Travis for permission to move back to her hometown, where her parents lived, where she had support, where Sophie would have stability and love. She wasn't trying to punish him. She wasn't trying to run away. She just needed help, and her help was 300 miles away. He refused instantly, not because he cared about Sophie, not because he planned to be a better dad. He refused because it was the one form of control he had left. Punishing Amber was more important than supporting their daughter. That should have told her everything. But trauma makes you excuse bad behavior in beautifully creative ways. For years, Amber ignored the tightness in Sophie's voice when the girl talked about Grandma Gloria. She ignored the way Sophie shrank at family gatherings when Mason received his latest round of applause. She ignored the way her daughter lingered near her at drop-off, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Amber ignored it all because admitting the truth meant facing the fact that Travis's family, the people she depended on for those court-ordered custody days, did not love her daughter the way they loved Mason. And then came the iPad. The stolen iPad. The forced confession. The suspension. The police. The shaking hands. The whispered, "No one will love me if I blame my cousin." The moment every suppressed doubt snapped into focus. Everything Amber tried to rationalize suddenly fit together with sickening clarity. They hadn't just favored Mason. They had always favored him. They had always seen Sophie as secondary. They had always expected her to be grateful for scraps. They had always believed protecting Mason's future mattered more than protecting Sophie's childhood. And the worst part? They'd been training Sophie, slowly, quietly, subtly, to believe it too. All those years of be a big girl, all those years of Mason's sensitive, all those years of don't make a fuss, all those years of handing him the first slice of cake and telling her to share, all those years of brushing off her hurt with, "he didn't mean it." They'd been teaching Sophie her place, and when the iPad incident came, she already knew the role she was expected to play. The scapegoat, the sacrifice, the child they could afford to lose. Amber used to think the worst thing in life was being married to Travis. She was wrong. The worst thing is realizing the people you trusted with your child, the people you hoped would love her, guide her, protect her, were willing to ruin her life to save someone else's. And in that moment, sitting in the car with her daughter sobbing into her hands, Amber felt something she hadn't felt in years. Clarity. Not rage. Not confusion. Not heartbreak. Clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate choice. And she knew exactly what she had to do next. They thought she would swallow it. They thought Sophie would stay silent. They thought wrong. If anyone had told Amber that the worst part wouldn't be the police officer, or the suspension, or even the written confession, it would be the car ride home afterward, she would have laughed. Not a happy laugh. A brittle one. The kind you give when you're trying not to shatter. Sophie cried herself quiet in the back seat. Not asleep. Quiet. Which is worse. When they got home, she clung to Amber like she was afraid someone would rip her away. And honestly, Amber felt the same. She made hot chocolate. Sophie didn't drink it. Amber sat on the couch. Sophie curled into her side, shaking. People talk about maternal instinct like it's soft and warm. Amber's felt like broken glass. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "you're safe now. You did nothing wrong." Sophie nodded, but her eyes were far away, the way kids look when they're trying to understand something that shouldn't exist in their world. They said I was helping," Sophie whispered, "and that Mason would lose everything if I didn't." Amber closed her eyes. Once. Slowly. Because if she didn't, she was going to break something. "And they said," Sophie swallowed, "they said you'd be disappointed in me if I told you." There it was. The knife. The idea that Sophie thought her mother would choose them over her. "Look at me," Amber said. Sophie did. Those terrified, apologetic eyes that didn't belong on a 9-year-old. "I love you," Amber said. "Not them. Not their rules. Not their twisted version of family. You. Always." Sophie burst into tears again, and Amber held her until she finally stopped shaking. But comforting her didn't cool Amber's anger. It sharpened it. There's a special kind of rage reserved for people who hurt your child. Not a loud rage, a cold, calculated kind. Amber stood up, grabbed her keys, and kissed Sophie's forehead. "Where are you going?" Sophie whispered. "To make sure this never happens again," Amber said. Sophie nodded like she understood in her bones. Amber drove straight to the police station. On the way, she practiced her voice. Neutral, steady, unshakable. Because if she broke down even once, they might mistake her for emotional instead of furious. Inside, she explained everything. The officer's expression went from polite to horrified in under 30 seconds. "Wait, your daughter was told to confess?" he asked. "Told, coached, threatened, manipulated. Pick your verb," Amber said. He blinked. "I'm going to need you to write that down." So she did. She wrote down every detail Sophie had whispered in the car. Every word Gloria said. Every lie, every threat, every ounce of pressure. She wrote until her hand cramped. When she finished, he said, "We'll open a report for coercion of a minor." Coercion of a minor. Hearing it out loud almost made Amber dizzy. "Will this help Sophie?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "It absolutely will." And for the first time that day, she breathed. Next, Amber drove back to the school. This time, she didn't wait politely in the office. She knocked on Ms. Nguyen's classroom door and asked the principal to join them. The moment they saw the police report in her hand, their expressions changed. "I'm so sorry," Ms. Nguyen whispered. "We would never have suspended her if we knew," the principal started. "That's why I'm here," Amber said. "She didn't steal anything. She didn't do any of this willingly. She was coached, threatened, lied to." Amber handed them copies of the statement. And she wrote that confession, Amber added, because she was told she'd lose her grandparents' love if she didn't. Ms. Nguyen covered her mouth. The principal sat down slowly. "We'll reopen the investigation," she said. "Good," Amber replied, "because you suspended the wrong child." Amber walked out before they could say anything else. Not dramatically, just deliberately. Silence is louder than shouting. She didn't even make it home before her phone started vibrating. First call. Travis. "Amber, what the hell is this?" he barked. "My mother is in tears." "Good," she said. "She should be." "You filed a police report? Over a kid's mistake? Over nothing?" "Your parents coerced a minor into confessing to a crime," Amber said. "Oh my God," he groaned. "You're always so dramatic." She hung up. Next call. Gloria. Her voice was shrill. "You ungrateful little, how dare you go to the police? You're going to ruin Mason's future." "You almost ruined Sophie's," Amber said. "She was helping the family." "She's 9. "Oh, please," Gloria snapped. "She's tougher than she looks." Amber hung up again. Next call. Brianna. "You think you can prove anything?" Brianna hissed. "You think anyone will believe you?" Sophie confessed. In writing. "Under duress," Amber said. "You can't prove that." "You'd be surprised." Amber hung up a third time. 3 calls. 3 villains. And strangely, she felt calmer with each one, because their panic told her everything she needed to know. They weren't sorry. They weren't confused. They weren't mistaken. They were guilty and scared. Exactly where they needed to be. Amber walked back into the house and found Sophie drawing quietly at the table, the tension gone from her shoulders for the first time all day. Amber kissed the top of her head. "You okay, baby?" she asked. Sophie nodded, and something settled inside Amber, a resolve so solid it felt like steel. They wanted a war. They just forgot one thing. Amber doesn't lose when she's fighting for her child. The next few days were strange. Quiet. Not peaceful. Just recalibrating. Sophie stayed home with Amber while the school reviewed everything. She carried the suspension like a bruise, not visible, but painful every time she moved. Amber kept things simple. Ice cream, movies, walks, anything normal. One night, Sophie asked, "Do I have to see them again?" "No," Amber said. "You don't." It wasn't dramatic, just the truth. 2 days later, Amber's mother arrived from out of state. She hugged Sophie like the girl was coming home from war. Sophie clung to her in a way that made something in Amber's chest crack. After 10 minutes, her mother looked at Amber and said quietly, "You should have moved home years ago." "I wasn't allowed," Amber said. "Courts." Her mother nodded. She didn't push. She didn't need to. While Sophie spent time with Amber's mom, Amber drove to the school for the update they'd promised. The principal looked exhausted. Ms. Nguyen looked embarrassed. They asked Amber to sit, bad sign, then told her what had happened. They questioned Mason alone. They showed him the anonymous post that used a photo lifted from Ms. Nguyen's iPad, a stupid, childish picture she would have deleted if she remembered it existed. Apparently, Mason giggled. That was all it took. The dam broke. He admitted stealing the iPad, admitted poking around in files, admitted posting the picture as a joke, admitted Gloria, Martin, and Brianna told Sophie to take the blame. The principal apologized, sincerely. But an apology doesn't fix what happened in that office, or the way Sophie looked at herself afterward. They overturned Sophie's suspension that day. Her record cleared. Everything reversed. Good, but not good enough. Next stop, Mr. Dalton's office, Amber's lawyer. She sat across from him and handed over everything. The police report, Sophie's statement, the school findings, all of it. He read in silence, turning pages slowly. Then he put the file down. "You have grounds for emergency custody," he said. Strong grounds. Good, Amber answered. They filed that afternoon. The judge didn't take long. Temporary sole custody granted. Sophie would stay with Amber until the final hearing. That night, the calls started. Gloria first. You selfish brat! Do you know what you've done to Mason's future? Amber hung up. Next came Brianna. You can't prove anything! She confessed! You're trying to destroy us! Hung up. Then Travis. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. You weren't there, Amber replied. Like always. He sputtered something defensive. She hung up a third time. 2 weeks later, they were in court. Travis showed up in a too expensive suit that didn't match his face. He had the expression of someone who assumed this was all an inconvenience he'd be done with by lunchtime. His lawyer opened with, My client wasn't even present during the incident. Mr. Dalton smiled, the polite kind that means trouble. That's correct, he said. He was not present. He is never present. He wins custody and then offloads the child to his parents, who manipulated a 9-year-old into confessing to a crime. That is the issue. Travis shifted in his seat. For once, he didn't have a smirk ready. They laid out everything. The police report, the school findings, the timeline, his complete lack of involvement in parenting. It didn't take an expert. It took 5 minutes for the judge to see exactly what he was. When it was over, the judge said, Sole legal and physical custody to the mother. Father will have supervised visitation only. Supervised, that was it. Was that one word cracked open a door Amber had been pounding on for years. Because supervised visitation meant something simple. She could move. And she did. She filed the relocation notice. She packed the house. She loaded the car. 3 weeks later, Amber and Sophie were driving across state lines toward Amber's hometown, the place she'd been trying to bring her daughter since the child was 4. When they got there, Amber's mother was waiting outside, waving like they were arriving from a long trip instead of escaping a war zone. Sophie ran straight into her arms. That was the moment Amber knew they were done with the old life. As for Gloria, Martin, Brianna, and Travis, they'd spent years reminding Amber she didn't belong in their family. Turns out they were right. And now, they had exactly what they wanted. A life without Amber and Sophie. Amber and Sophie had one without them too. And theirs was better. It's been a year. Life looks nothing like it used to. No drama, no anxiety, no waiting for the next blow. Just normal. Amber didn't realize how rare that was until they had it. Travis never used his supervised visitation. Not once. He disappeared from the schedule the same way he disappeared from parenting. Sophie stopped asking about him months ago. That used to hurt Amber, but now it felt like peace. Sophie wasn't waiting for someone who never showed up. She was thriving. New school, new friends, new routines. Amber's parents lived 20 minutes away, and Sophie lit up around them. Amazing what real love can do. Amber got a new job too. Better hours, better pay, better everything. Turns out life gets lighter when nobody is dragging you down. Every so often, a friend from their old state sent Amber updates. Apparently, the fallout didn't stay quiet. Mason didn't settle after the iPad incident. More jokes, more boundary issues, more excuses from Brianna. Eventually, he was expelled. Not suspended. Expelled. And when he enrolled in a new school, parents there already knew. Stories travel fast when kids are involved. No one wants their child sitting next to the boy who stole a teacher's device and let another kid take the fall. Gloria and Martin didn't escape the consequences either. Their reputation took a dive. Invitations dried up. They were quietly asked to step back from groups they once bragged about. Parents didn't want them around their kids either. But the harshest fallout hit Brianna. At Mason's new school, people had already heard what happened. The other moms kept their distance. The looks were sharp. Last Amber heard, Brianna avoided school events whenever she could. Meanwhile, Sophie came home smiling now. That told Amber everything she needed to know. So tell her, did she go too far? or not far enough? Let her know in the comments and subscribe for more.